and they were on my needles for a total of 172 days. And also it's brioche, so it takes a lot of time. Hi and welcome, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Mathilde, I'm a French knitter, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed already, you can click on the subscribe button down below so that you don't miss any future content. Today is going to be a regular podcast episode where I'm going to talk to you about 3 finished objects. I know, insane. 2 whips that are back on my needles and future plans. And also at the end, I'm going to ask you a question and I would love your input. The first finished object of today's podcast is what I'm actually wearing, which was already kind of a finished object in the previous one, but it hadn't been blocked. And I really wanted to share with you the finished project as a blocked item. And this is Mixed Rib Cami by Florence Miller, which I knit in Knitting for Live cotton merino in the colorway Thundercloud. And I really love the result. So I already talked a lot about this project, so in this podcast I'm only going to talk about what I think of it post-blocking and like all of the specs of this project, so the cost and the number of days it was on my needles, which is a lot. I think the blocking thankfully didn't grow this project a ton, even though it's ribbed, because it still suits me pretty well. I forgot to check my gauge, so I'll do that after I film and I'll put it on the screen, like if I have the recommended ease that this garment is supposed to have, because if you haven't watched any of my previous podcasts, I decided to knit this in the recommended needle size, so 3mm needles, but knitting a size 4 or D to get a size 3 or C, which is the size that I would need to get for my measurements. It's definitely a little bit loose, but it's not loose to the point where it's too much ease, if that makes sense. And I'm really glad that I made the modifications that I wanted. So I followed the pattern in terms of the waist shaping. I did a lot of decreases for the waist shaping, which you can see here, and then I added towards the bottom some hip increases. I will say, because I've been able to wear this a few times now, it's a good length if I want to wear it untucked like I am right now above my shorts. Even though they're high-waisted, I don't mind it if it's not tucked, because I did make it a little bit cropped. But if I want to wear it tucked, it's a little bit too short because it doesn't really stick. Is that the word? It doesn't really stay tucked inside my jeans or whatever. So if I were to make this again, which I might, I'm not going to change this one, but if I make this again next year or another year, I think I would maybe try to make it a little bit longer so that it stays tucked. But I have to say I do really like this fit, because even though, you know, when I wear my jeans sometimes I do want to wear it tucked, it's at least at a good length that if it untucks itself, it doesn't hit at a weird point on my body, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. So I'm happy with those modifications. And then the other thing was that I had some kind of bubbling effect around the armholes on one side. So on this side, I think, and on the back side here. I don't know if that was how I picked up my stitches for the armholes to do the I-cord, or if it was just my I-cord was too tight. Not sure, but I think it doesn't bubble as much. It does a little bit, but not something crazy. So I think blocking helped with that. So I think that's it for the chatty bit on this one, but let me run you through the stats of this. So as I said, for this project I used cotton merino by Knitting for Live. I used a little bit less than 3 balls, but I definitely tapped into the 3rd skein, so I would count that in my yarn cost. So the total cost was 58.50 euros. The pattern price is at 8.68 euros, I think, something like that. And so that makes this a total cost of 67.14 euros. And this knit was on my needles for 372 days. Obviously I didn't knit on it for like 10 months in between. I cast this on in July of last year, and I think I knitted on it for maybe 2 weeks before I had to stop because of a tendinitis that I had. And by the time my arm felt better, it was, I think, the beginning of fall, and so I didn't really want to pick this back up. So I only picked this back up, I want to say in June of this year, and so back then it was on my needles for around a month or something. So definitely not 300 days of knitting, but I think that was the longest time a whip was on my needle, so it feels really good to have it done and to be able to wear it. And I have to say, I think it's one of my favorite summer knits of this year. I haven't done a lot. Actually, maybe that's a lie, because I really, really love other knits that I've made this year, but I really enjoyed this one. So I'm really glad that I stuck with it, and I can see myself knitting it again in the future. So if you've been eyeing that one and you're unsure, I personally really recommend this one. The pattern was really clear. There was just one bit where I was a bit confused when doing the waist shaping, because I wasn't sure what stockinette panels she was talking about, like the number of stitches in between. I talk about this in another podcast episode, so if you have any questions you can leave them down below if you haven't watched that. But that was just me, I think, being a bit tired when reading the pattern, I think, because I think it made sense. I'll check my gauge and then I'll let you know on the screen if next time I do this knit I choose to do a size like smaller, the recommended size for me, because I feel like I could definitely have a bit less ease, but I'm happy with the fit anyway. Okay, let's move on to my next finished object, which is, I think, my last project that was on my summer knitting plans in terms of summer tops, and that is the Camisole No.4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It looks so good! I knitted this one with leftover cashmere yarn from Knitting for Live, which is their compatible cashmere in the colorway cream. I had this yarn left over from the Celine cardigan, which I made earlier this year, and I thought it was a great idea to make it into a bralette, but it turns out that I had enough for a camisole, so that's what I did. I held the yarn double and I knit this on 3mm I knit this on 4mm needles, and I made a size small. Let me check. Yes, I made a size small. So I was pretty much far away on this in the last podcast, so I just finished the body, and turned out I made it as cropped as my last one, because I actually really love the fit of that. But I did a regular bind off, and this one is a little bit too tight. I thought I had switched up the right needle, because I only switched up one of them to do the bind off, because I wanted to use a needle size bigger to do the bind off, because my bind offs are usually a bit tight. And turns out I had switched the wrong one. So you know how you can switch just one? I don't know how to explain that. I think it's the left one that you're supposed to switch if you're a right-handed knitter, which I'm not. I'm left-handed, but I do knit right-handed anyways. So I switched up this one instead of this one, and so when I knit, it didn't actually count. I don't know, but it's just a bit too tight. Like, it's fine, I can wear it, but you probably can see that it kind of cinches inwards, and especially when it's on my body, it does that, and so it's not the most flattering because it is a little bit cropped. So I think I'm gonna go back and undo the bind off and just redo it, which isn't too bad because it's a regular bind off. I haven't been feeling the need or want to do it right now, but I think I will, because it does bother me a tiny bit. But otherwise, this is a lovely knit. I really love it. I think I like it a bit less than the green one for some reason. Maybe just because of the bind off, to be honest. And the yarn is absolutely stunning and so soft and feels lovely. It does peel a bit because it is cashmere, but it's nothing crazy. Like, it's not as much as my Celine cardigan, which is knit in pure lana by Cardigan, held with one strand of this, and so I think in that cardigan, which does pill quite a bit. It's a mix of those two blends, or like the alpaca merino and the cashmere, that makes it pill a lot. This one pills a bit. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but it does pill a bit, but it's nothing too crazy. And I think because this is cashmere, it's going to be lovely to wear in the winter underneath heavy jumpers. So I'm excited for that. I will say two things. I never know, because this is my second time doing this project, this pattern, I always struggle with this middle bit here, which always looks a bit funny. I did try to tighten it a lot when I was weaving in my ends, but it didn't work. And then on one side, which you can probably tell on this one, this really curls inwards a lot, whereas this one doesn't. So I don't know what I did. Maybe when I blocked it, this one held much better than this, but this bothers me a little bit. So I'll try blocking it again to see if I can fix that, but obviously the first block didn't fix that, so we'll see. Okay, let's talk about the specs of this project. This was on my needles for only 16 days. I mean, it's a summer knit, it's a sleeveless top, and I hyper focused on it because it's cashmere and it's really lovely to work on. So definitely not a lot of times on the needles. And then for the yarn cost, I think I used a bit less than 4 skeins. I have to weigh the last skein that I have, but I think, I mean, I know it's definitely, yeah, a bit less than 5. I think it's 4, maybe 4.5 something. I'll put it on the screen exactly how many grams I use, because I can't really remember right now, and I forgot to grab my leftover yarn, so, but I do have a tiny bit left over, and so I think the total cost of this yarn was around 46 euros. And I don't think I'm going to count the pattern price because I have bought it previously and I've knitted it before, so it kind of feels like it's a little bit of a free pattern. But in case you're wondering, you can buy this pattern for 6.95 euros, and so the total cost of this project would be around 50.95 euros, which, you know, is around this project cost, and but it's cashmere, so I'm not too mad about that. That feels really nice. So I'm really happy with this project. I've been wearing them non-stop, to be honest, when it's warm enough, because I now live in the mountains. It's actually not that warm all the time, which I'm personally very happy about because I've been able to get a lot of wear out of my winter garments. But yeah, let's move on to the last finished object of this podcast. And I think you guys will be very happy to see this finished and, you know, maybe proud of me for having stuck to my words for once. I finished my Maine Coast summer socks, finally. And how gorgeous are they? They're still a tiny bit damp from blocking, but they are blocked. To be honest, they don't look that much different blocked than when they were not blocked. But I think they look stunning. So I knit these in Arvetta by Filcolana in the colorway Chinese Red, which I think is 218, which is a really lovely red, but it definitely leans a little bit more pink, which I don't know if you can see on camera, but it's definitely, it's not a bright red, it just leans a tiny bit more pink. So just in case you're wondering about which red to get from Filcolana. The needle size recommended for this pattern is, I think, 3mm or 3.25mm even, and so I didn't want my stitches to be too loose, especially for a sock, and so I decided to size down in needle size. So I chose to knit this in my regular needle size for socks, which is 2.5mm needles, because my gauge is pretty tight. I feel like I'm getting the same stitch definition that most people have with 2.25mm needles, and I don't have that needle anyway, so maybe you can see that it's pretty tight. I haven't worn them yet, but I did try them on earlier, so if they're looking a bit rough already, that's why. And so because I sized down in the needle size, I chose to knit a size bigger, and actually I chose to do the largest size in the pattern, which is size XL. So I had a lot of stitches on my needles, but I think it fits me perfectly, and I was a little bit worried because it fitted me pretty well pre-blocking. So I thought maybe it would stretch a bit too much in blocking, but it hasn't. We'll see how it goes when I put it in the washing machine to clean them. I just did a regular blocking, you know, putting it in lukewarm water and block them for the first time, and then I'll put them in the washing machine when I wear them. But I think they suit me really, really well. Maybe they could be a tad more tight, but I don't really mind. And as I said, I don't think the cables really bloomed or like settled. I don't know. I think they look pretty similar to how they looked before, but they're still really, really pretty. And I did make a mistake in the second sock. I'm not sure why. Not even sure what happened. Maybe you can see on the toe, it doesn't sit very well as much as this one, which sits pretty, or maybe it does on this side actually. I don't know. Anyways, turned out I had 2 stitches too much on the toe when I was doing, or when I was about to start the Kitchener bind off, and so I decided to decrease on just the one side where I had too many stitches just before, and so my toes are maybe not as neat as they are supposed to be, but I think it's fine. It doesn't really show that much. Otherwise, I followed the pattern exactly. I think I had a bit of trouble getting the right amount of stitches for my heel, which is a heel flap and gusset, but I think it turned out okay. And this is a lovely, you know, almost all over cable sock except for the under the foot, but it wasn't too annoying to knit. I did have to keep track of my rows, but I always do that anyways when I knit socks, because I really want my socks to be exactly the same. So I write down every row that I do, because I'm not about to count the amount of rows that I make, especially in the fit, because you can probably tell I have a pretty big fit. I'm a size 40.5, 41 EU, and so they're pretty big. So talking about the yarn before we get into the specs of this project, I have to weigh how much I've got, but I did use 2 skeins again because I've got pretty large feet, so I have leftovers, but I don't think that's a full skein, so I'll have to weigh it and put it on the screen how much that is. But I think it's plenty left over to make like a contrast heel and toe on another pair of socks. So I have to think about, I think I'm just gonna do like a vanilla sock is what I'm trying to say, or maybe a ribbed sock with this contrast heel and toe, but let me know which color I should get for the main color of the sock to hold with this red, because I don't know, except for white, but maybe that's a bit boring. As for the specs of this project, so I used Felkana Veta. I bought 2 skeins and I obviously tapped into both of them, so that is a total of 11.40 euros. And then the pattern cost was 3.88 euros. I don't know if that's all the time of it or if I had bought it on a discount. I can't remember. I think I had a discount, and that makes the total amount of this project 15.28 euros. So not too bad for a pair of socks. I'm not mad about that. And the number of days actually, and it was on my and they were on my needles for a total of 172 days. Again, I didn't knit on them I didn't cast on the second sock for I think 3-4 months, but even then socks take me a really long time to knit. I don't know if it's because of my feet, the length of them, it's quite long, or if it's just because I can't knit on socks for like a weekend and be done with it. It just always takes me a bit longer. So one sock can take me up to a week and a half. I think maybe the second sock took me even 2 weeks. A bit less because I'm filming this podcast about 2 weeks after my last one. So, but yeah, these are my main Coast Summer socks. I'm really happy with them. I hope they suit well when I wear my Birkenstocks, even though, let me know how you feel about wearing socks with Birkenstocks, but I want to try. And yeah, let's move on to the whips. Okay, let's stick to the red projects, and I'm happy to share with you that I did pick up my Agnete Cardigan by Petite Knit up again. So it's not a ton of progress, please don't expect a crazy amount of knitting done, because I did, finish most of my garments and the socks, and then I mostly worked on the other projects, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I did get a few rows done, and also it's brioche, so it takes a long time. So here is the progress on my Agnete Cardigan by Petite Knit. Not a crazy amount, as you can probably tell. I am knitting this in Knitting for Live Merino and soft silk mohair in the colorway Red Currant, which is this lovely combination. As always, Knitting for Live is one of my favorite yarn, and I'm using 3.5mm needles, and I'm knitting size medium because I did go up just half a needle size, and I don't think I was reaching gauge exactly, so I wanted to make sure it would suit me well. And so I am using 3.5mm needles or US4, but knitting a size, like I'm always in between size small and size medium anyway, so that should fit me well. And I haven't been able to reach the second buttonhole yet. When I say this takes a lot of time, this is how much I've done since I picked this back up. And that was about 5 hours of knitting, I would say. So, maybe even more. So it takes a while. I'm hoping to be able to reach at least the second buttonhole, if not the third, by the next podcast. But at least it's back on the needles. Like, I've put this aside again for about a week because I wanted to make progress on the other whip. But I think I'm going to try, because I'm still on holidays for a while, I want to try to get at least 1 hour a day on this, and we'll see how far that gets me. Also, because it's brioche, I mean, I don't know if it's because it's brioche, but at least this project hurts my wrist a little bit, so I can't work on it for too long at a time, like in a session, let's say. So I do have to put this down a few times a day anyway, so I can't work on it for like 6 hours in a day. So, but I hope I'll get more progress for next time. So I put the stitch marker below so that you can see how much I get done, and maybe I'll even time myself to be able to truly let you know like how long it takes me to do even just one row. Wait, I think I've messed up actually here. That's good to see. We'll see. I think I messed up in the double knitting. Anyways, do I need anything else on this one? I don't think so. But I'm really happy to have this back on my needles. But let's talk about the other whip, which has gotten a far more progress on it. So this is the Tulip Loop V-neck by Other Loops. Which I am knitting in Knitting for Live Heavy Merino and soft silk mohair in the colorway Dusty Banana. I don't have a full balls left over, but this is what they're looking like. And I have, since last time I showed this on the podcast, I actually finished the back hem of the body, which was done like a few weeks ago, but that was the only progress I had on this, so I didn't really want to share that on the podcast for just 2 seconds of talking. So I had finished this a while back, and I'll go back to talking about the bind off after. I also managed to finish one sleeve, and I'm working on the second one. So that's how it's looking now. And I have to say, I'm very, very excited to block this and to see how it looks post-blocking, because I'm not entirely sure I'm loving it right now. Obviously, you can see it looks, I think the post-blocking will be amazing, hopefully. crossing my fingers because I have big hope for this. Okay, let's talk about the bind off on the body, because when I last talked to you about this project in one of the previous podcasts, I had finished the bind off on the front hem of the body, because this is a split hem and I have a lot of ends to weave in still, but that's okay. I decided to do an Italian bind off, or even a tubular bind off on this, even though the pattern was recommending a regular bind off. That's because of the stockinette panel that runs down the side of the body into the split hem. So you can see here there's a little bit of stockinette panels, and so if you do a regular bind off, you can maintain the knits and purls. But because I chose to do a tubular bind off, I had to do those 2 rows of double knitting before, and so I had to create the knit purl knit purl knit purl pattern before doing the bind off, if that makes sense. So it does look a tiny bit weird, but I hadn't really thought about it before starting the Italian bind off, because that's just the bind off that I prefer. And my bind off is a little bit loose, but we'll see if I fix it. But I decided for the back hem to try to do the regular bind off, which is what is recommended in the pattern. So it means I have 2 different bind off on the body, and it looks a bit weird, but I'm not really going to redo it. So it's a regular bind off here, which looks fine in a way. It's just not my favorite bind off. And when you compare it, how can I show you? When you compare it to the Italian bind off, it just, I don't know, I just prefer the top one more. I think because it's a split hem, it's not gonna show too much and it's not gonna matter, and it's not that much less loose anyway. And also I think because obviously when it's gonna block the body, it's gonna grow a ton, so I think the bind off doesn't matter if it's too loose right now. We'll see post blocking what I think, but I don't think I'm gonna redo it. And then for the sleeve, I followed the instructions entirely. I did also do an Italian or tubular bind off instead of the regular bind off recommended, because again you do have a stockinette panel running down the sleeve, and so you do have a stockinette panel inside the ribbing, which is a little bit like unusual, but I wanted to follow the pattern, so I did it as well. But I did do 2 rows of double knitting, so it doesn't look the neatest, but I don't really care because I love an Italian bind off more. And I think the sleeves might be a bit too long, and so I followed the pattern exactly. It said knit the cable repeats X amount of time, and then you have to do 8 centimeters of ribbing. So I, followed the pattern without really trying it on, and I tried it on just before starting the ribbing, and it was already pretty long. So I decided to do just the same amount of rows on this ribbing as the amount on the neckline, because at least it matches. I didn't really care if it wasn't matching, but I thought that way it's neat. And when I tried it on, even with just this amount of ribbing, it was already a bit long, because I'm expecting the body obviously to grow, and so the sleeves to drop even more. So I tried to stretch it as much as I could to see if the length was good. I hope I managed to get the right amount. If it's a little bit too long, I don't think it matters too much, because I like my sleeves pretty long and I can always roll it up and wear it a little bit rolled up. But if it's like way too long, then that's not gonna work. So we'll see. I debated blocking this to figure this out, but I'm just going with the flow with this knit, to be honest. It's not that I'm not obsessed with it, it's just that I'm waiting to see how it looks post-blocking, and I don't really want to have to wait 2 weeks for it to dry. I mean, it's not going to take 2 weeks, but I don't really want to wait for it to dry for 5 days before I have to pick this back up again. Like, I'm in a good groove right now with this, and I'm hoping to finish it for the next podcast, and so we'll see how it looks then. So that's it for my knits. I've been pretty busy actually, not that I thought I had that much done. I debated casting on another summer knit, which was the square neck camisole by Garn Slicked, which would have been like an impromptu cast on, which were not on my summer knitting plans. But I think I'm gonna hold off on that and actually start, once I finish this, which I'm really excited to finish, to start my full knitting plans, to be honest. Although I do still have one small project to do. So because I've finished my socks, I'm gonna cast that on pretty soon. I'm hoping to get at least 1 or 2 new cast-ons for the next podcast, but I don't actually have that much knitting time considering I'm on holidays, so we'll see. We'll see how far we go. And the question that I wanted to ask you guys is about whether you guys would be interested in doing live streams with me. I've moved house, if you cannot tell. I've talked about it a bunch, and I think I've finally got a good space for me to do live streams. I think we'll just start with one, just to see how it works technical wise, and you know, if you guys like the idea or not. But I think that could be fun to do, and maybe once we get going and if it works well, and if I don't have too much difficulty, maybe we could do this on a regular basis. So let me know your thoughts on that. I would really appreciate, knowing your opinion on that, and if you would like to participate in the live streams, or if it's just too bothersome for you, especially because I am in France, and so we would have to figure out a time zone that could work for some people, but it probably won't work for everyone. So yeah, let me know if you're interested. Let me know where you are in the world so I can try to find a time that works for at least most people, and we'll try out a few things and see how it goes. So I think that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this update, and I'm excited to show you more in the next podcast. So I hope you're all well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.